Hi, I'm Sean Kavanagh. I'm the Operations Director for the Sofa Delivery Company. Sofa Delivery Company are part of the DFS group, the biggest sofa retailer in the UK. We've been working with WPP for the last 7 or 8 years now and been on a real journey improving efficiencies for our people and the business.
Great stuff. So for the audience that might not have heard of DFS, who is DFS, what do you do, and what are your most interesting challenges that AI has been addressing?
We deliver sofas. The clue's in the title. We are the biggest sofa retailer in the country. We work with DFS and also with Sofology. We also work with some independent brands delivering on their behalf. Our biggest challenges go back 7 or 8 years, and we were planning our routes for final mile genuinely with an AA route planner in 20 or 25 locations, and our routes were only as good as the manager. They had loads of bits of paper on the floor, and they used to genuinely work out what was in each postcode and try and get a decent route for a driving crew that would then be very unhappy about it. And we worked with WPP to effectively create an optimised route. It was looking at, there's so many variables as you can imagine. At the time, the customer proposition was poor at best. We'd manually arrange by ringing them up. We'd sort of tell them when we were coming. There was no real choice. And then the delivery itself was, we'd turn up on the day at some point. We couldn't really tell you when because we were using an AA route planner. Over time, the work that's been done has been revolutionary. We now presumptively arrange. So the customer arranges online, self-selects. They get choice. They can choose when they want it. Not just by day. That day fits for us operationally. And also a 3-hour window. So they get a 3-hour slot. They also get to track what's going on, so they can see where we are in the day. And from our perspective, it means we've got happy drivers that know what they're doing. They know the route's going to be sensible. We've taken, I think it's about 18-20% off our miles on the road, so big reduction in carbon, and also from a sort of overtime efficiency perspective, we're taking about 20% of our overtime bill down. So it's absolutely transformed the way that we work, the way that we operate, and what we offer for customers.
Yes, I mean, I was actually part of the origins of this solution back in the day. So Satalia, who actually wasn't acquired then by WPP, had been collaborating with WPP on a number of projects, also with DFS, and Satalia had built Tesco's last mile delivery solution, and obviously delivering grocers is very different to delivering sofas, because you've got to figure out, can you fit the sofa through the door or through the window? Lots more complexity actually. And the question was, could we take a lot of the innovations that we built for Tesco and then redeploy them to replace this manual process with now something much more algorithmic? And I remember actually being in the depots with the drivers at 6 o'clock in the morning trying to explain to them the mathematics behind this. So maybe just to kind of geek out a second, if you have 5 deliveries to make, there are 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 possible solution. So if you've got 5, there's 120 possible solutions. If you've got 15 deliveries to make, which I think is roughly an average of a van, there are now 1 trillion solutions. So there are 1 trillion possible routes that a van could make if they're delivering to 15 locations. If you've got 60 deliveries, then there are more solutions than there are atoms in the universe. And I can't remember exactly how many deliveries you make a day. I think it's like 15,000 deliveries a week. How many deliveries?
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
So I guess on a day-to-day, you're delivering to 2,000 deliveries. 2,000 factorial is an enormous number. And so to expect a human being to figure out that route is actually a waste of time. So we actually took the algorithms that we were developing for some of these large retailers, we redeployed them for DFS. And interestingly, and this is really important, it wasn't just about focusing on cost reduction. And what's really important about AI is that AI can massively overachieve the goal. If you give it one KPI, it can massively overachieve the goal. But what it can then do is it can actually start to cause harm elsewhere in the supply chain. So for example, if the KPI was maximize deliveries, then the drivers wouldn't be getting home in time for their families. They won't be having time to get their breaks and things like that. So we approached it actually quite holistically. How do we make sure that we're improving the quality of experience to the customers? So making sure that the sofas are being delivered on time. How do we make sure that the drivers have time for breaks and get home to their families on time, that we're minimizing carbon, and all the projects that we do, we typically see a massive reduction in carbon, and that's something we're really proud of. But from what I understand as well, it's been an overwhelming success. We've taken what we've done in terms of the last mile and now focused on middle mile. I don't know if you want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah. So the primary focus was final mile, of course. I think that's the thing that we've enjoyed most. We've built a relationship with the guys originally from Satalia and WPP, and built on almost explaining what the problem is and trying to work out a solution from there, and taking the same sort of thinking for final mile. We do some trunking around the country, so we get sofas arriving from suppliers to a central point, and then we've got to get it across to our CDC network. There's 22 sites across the country, and again, similar sort of problem in that you've got to work out the best way to get that stock in full at the right time to those sites. So yeah, we use middle mile, as we call it, to plan all of that trunking. It's building in inbound from suppliers, from both internally and externally, and then working out the most efficient route to take to get those to CDCs, which ultimately then feeds the final mile solution and getting stuff in time for customers.
Yeah, and maybe it's also important to appreciate that this is not just one algorithmic solution. I know that everybody now thinks that AI is generative AI, and generative AI is very good at creating content, images and text and things like that, but generative AI is not actually applicable to these types of problems. And again, what's interesting is that from a last mile perspective, there are actually broadly, I'm going to geek out again, 4 optimization problems you need to solve for. One is that when the customers are coming in to select slots from your website, you need to figure out how many slots, what's the most number of slots I can actually serve that customer. In the background, there are very complex algorithms that are trying to work out, can I deliver to this customer at this slot, this slot, this slot? And that has to happen very, very quickly. Obviously then, between that customer selecting a slot and a new customer coming in, we have to then optimize those schedules in the background so we can then show more slots to the next customer, which is again a different type of algorithm. Sometimes, unfortunately, there are scenarios where vehicles go down, depots go down, and you have to then redistribute and re-optimize those deliveries. And there's also, I think, in DFS, a cutoff point where you stop offering slots to customers, and then you can then, over a period of time, reschedule those deliveries, so your vans are leaving the depots in a staggered way, so they're not queued, that they're coming back at the same time, etc. So there's actually a lot of complexity that sits behind there, as well as machine learning being used to predict how long is it going to take to deliver this sofa to this customer. Do they have to take the window out? Will they fit it through the door? There's a huge amount of complexity that sits behind these technologies, and what I'm particularly proud of is not just building this innovation or these innovations for DFS. What I'm really proud of is that actually you've taken that innovation, turned it from a cost center to actually now a revenue center. So you've now created the sofa delivery company. You've platformized that innovation that you're now delivering to other brands and other customers.
Absolutely. I think one of the big successes when we're talking to new customers is, they can't quite believe what we can offer. They're used to getting something which is will arrive a bit like what we used to do, a full day slot. The customer will get it through a phone call probably. The fact that we can offer it online, they can pick what they want pretty much, and the system almost does the work for us in terms of managing that sort of final mile, I suppose the end state to the customer when it's coming, all the interactions. It's fantastic. The new customers generally that we're working with are much smaller than us, obviously. Small businesses, online businesses that they don't have the scale to be able to deliver the way that we do. So to be able to tap into our model is fantastic. It's a real unique thing for us to be able to offer. So
that's brilliant. When I engaged with DFS almost 10 years ago, what was exciting for me was that if you look at the size of the business, in theory you can solve end-to-end supply chain. What I mean by that is creating a digital twin. We know we can solve problems across a supply chain, but the real opportunity here is to create a digital twin, digital simulation of the entire business. The reality is, if you go to a retailer now, and if I say I'm going to run a marketing campaign that's going to increase demand by 10%, can you tell me, will your suppliers default on their supply? Do you have enough space in your warehouses? Do you have enough distribution drivers? Do you have enough people in your stores to fulfill the promise to the customer? The reality is that you can't easily project those questions across the supply chain. I think that's the journey that we've been going on with DFS over the past 10 years, to essentially allow your organization to adapt rapidly to a changing world. And I know we're also bringing in new interesting software development methodologies with AI to allow you to, again, release code more effectively. But just what's next in store for DFS? What's your current priorities?
Yeah, I think the first thing is probably in the supply chain. We've been working hard with middle mile on how you speed up the lead time. So if we can offer a sofa currently within about 14 days from it arriving in our site out to customers, we know there's people out there doing it in 7. So how do we use middle mile? How do we use that efficiency gain to improve that speed and get stuff out to customers within 7 days would be game changing, I think, for sales. I think there's lots of work been going on from an online sales perspective with chatbots and more improvements to come on that. And I think in retail, lots of work done on demand planning, so forecasting for labour. We've done lots of work on using footfall, weather, all the data in the world to work out exactly when our shift should be and what. I think there's loads more to come on that. We've probably dipped our toe in the water, lots more to do on it. So that's probably the main bit.
And actually, this is a really important topic because often, every time there's a new technology, like 10 years ago it was data lakes and machine learning, and now it's generative AI. What tends to happen is that organizations get very excited about these emerging technologies, then they try and apply those technologies to solving the wrong problem, they fail, and people then blame the technologies. And I always advise organizations, start with the problem, start with the frictions, and then work backwards. And that's the journey that you've been going on. So what advice would you give to organizations like yourselves that are going on their AI journey?
Yeah, I think like most companies, we say we love data, but actually, working with you guys, it's you're providing data, but then also providing the expertise to go, this is what you'd actually do with it. And I think the biggest learning that we've had is, you can have all that data, but really thinking about what you're going to do with it and how you're going to react to it and how you're going to use that with people and make the biggest change is probably the most important thing, I'd say. And the expertise that you've given us and the support that you've given us through, I said it right at the beginning, the relationship piece is probably the most important lesson for us. How you go about implementing what you're looking at, I suppose, and what the problem you're trying to solve. It gets repeated in our business a lot, and it's come from you guys in working on these projects together. Understanding that truly will determine the outcome that you get, I think.
Yeah, so maybe just
agree.
Maybe just add to that. I think that you're sitting on some really interesting data that I think it's ultimately data that makes AI smart. And I think there are 3 other things that are important here. One is, you've mentioned this already, which is change management. You have to take everybody on the journey. If this was just imposed on the delivery drivers, if it was just imposed on the people in the call center, then the people would react badly. And what's been really great about working with DFS is that how you take everybody on that journey to make sure that you include everybody from the top to the bottom. The second is AI talent, and I think a lot of organizations think they can attract AI talent, and the reality is they struggle. So I think that's where that partnership has been amazing. You've got incredible domain knowledge about your business. We've obviously got incredible AI talent, and that partnership has worked really well. And I think actually for me the most important ingredient is leadership. It's making sure that leadership are not seduced by the hype, making sure that they understand the power of these technologies and place the right bets. And I think that's what we're going to continue to do over the next 10 years together. So for you personally, what's been your highlight in working with the WPP, and what are you looking forward to in the future?
I think thinking back to people with sheets of paper on the floor to what we've got now, you talked about what was it, 1 trillion different, outcomes. I think watching people that have been in the business for 30 years genuinely telling me that they're better at working this out on a piece of paper than a system is or AI is. Watching them after 6 months or a year or whatever, actually understanding what goes on behind it, and watching the change in the business, watching the customer improvement. I think customer NPS has gone up by about 8% in that time. Obviously the transformation in costs. And I think probably since that initial breakthrough, working with you again, almost explaining an idea, and then almost having that critical friend to go, yeah, okay, let's take that away, understand the problem, and then coming up with a solution, and watching it go from an idea that you've got in your mind to something that's been rolled out has been fantastic. So I think said it to you right at the beginning, it's all about the relationship for me, and really proud of what we've built together.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you for chatting today, and look forward to continuing to working with you over the next few years.
Spot on. Thank you.